Hey, how's it going? So today I want to talk about a topic that's been floating around the community for a little while now, and that is the concept of a group Ironman mode. I'm going to be going over the pros and cons of having these types of accounts in the game, as well as going over possible solutions to what some of the issues might be if group Ironman mode was to be implemented. Now keep in mind, this video is going to be biased because I do personally want this game mode to be released. Although I understand there are people against it, and I completely respect that opinion, and I would love to hear the reason for that opinion in the comments. Because just in general, it's very difficult to see an outside perspective on something being so tunnel visioned and focused on a belief. Also, unless you want to watch me pickpocket on my hardcore Ironman, by the way, then there's really nothing to watch, so you can just minimize this and listen in the background. So with that being said, what is Ironman mode? Some people don't exactly understand the differences between the different game modes, so I'll try to break it down. Basically, besides the regular game mode, there's also Ironman, Ultimate Ironman, and Hardcore Ironman. And Ironman and Ultimate Ironman were both released on October 13th, 2014, while Hardcore Ironman was released much later on November 10th, 2016. So it's much more recent, but still over a year old now. When you go through Tutorial Island at the end, there's an option to set your status to what kind of account you want it to be, and you have the option to make it permanent, or you can set the option so that it can be removed with a delay after you enter a bank pin. Ironman mode is pretty much meant to be a single player RuneScape, but you don't get your own instance game world, so there are restrictions placed on these accounts. As a regular Ironman, which is like the standard Ironman mode, you can't trade with other players, you can't use the GE, if someone damages your monsters you can't pick up the loot, you can't use other players' houses, you don't gain XP from PvP except the base magic XP from spells that you cast, you can't stake, you can't get any resource rewards from the Nightmare Zone, and the list goes on, but the main idea is that there's no way to benefit an Ironman account through player interaction. Now, Hardcore Ironman follows all the exact same rules as a regular Ironman, except you only have one life, and when you die, you lose your hardcore status and become a regular Ironman. If you die, this doesn't mean you'll lose your account, but your stats on the hardcore Ironman high scores will be locked in place, and you'll only be able to compete on the regular Ironman high scores. Although there are some ways you're allowed to die on there, which is any safe deaths, which includes a lot of the mini games. And then for Ultimate Ironman, they are allowed to die, but it does have all the restrictions of a regular Ironman, except they can't use a bank. And then they also can't make item sets using the GE, they can't do kingdom management, they can't send their house servant to the bank or sawmill, and they won't keep any items on death, and they can't use the protect item prayer. So without a bank on the Ultimate Ironman, it makes it a very difficult way to play the game, and you really have to plan your strategy on that account way in advance, or else you might end up wasting hundreds of hours of time for a simple mistake. So now that you understand each of the Ironman modes, let's go over what Group Ironman is all about and what it's supposed to be. So I'm not exactly sure when or how it was conceived, but I think it really started coming about in the last 6 months or so, and I'm also not exactly sure where it started, whether it was through Reddit or JMods or the players themselves. But I think the general consensus behind what Group Ironman mode is supposed to be is that you can team up with a total of between 2 and 5 new Ironman accounts, which will have all the restrictions of regular Ironman, except you can all trade between each other. So at the moment, every variation of Ironman mode has been a more difficult version of the regular Ironman mode, but Group Ironman mode would be an easier version of the regular Ironman mode. So I think it sounds like a neat idea in theory, and of course there would be a lot of potential issues which would need to be worked out first, which I'll be going over in just a bit. But the next thing I want to go over is if this is even possible to do. So right now, let me play you a clip from the old school RuneScape livestream regarding the engine work for Group Ironman mode. And keep in mind, this is a slightly older clip. It's from September 6th of 2017, so it might be a bit outdated, but let's take a look at it.
That we'd like to offer in the future.
And yeah, for everyone saying group, we want group as well.
Yeah.
But that unfortunately is engine work, and there's absolutely no way around that. We literally have no way of storing player IDs once you log out. So there's no way to say, oh, I can trade with Ed, it'll be fine, and then suddenly Ed logs out, he logs back in, he's got a different ID, I can't remember his ID, I can no longer trade with him.
That's the same.
So according to this clip from a few months ago now at this point, they're saying it's not possible to do because of the game engine. However, if you remember a while back, they said the same thing about RuneScape Mobile, how it would require too much engine work and licensing and all that kind of stuff, and it would just never be possible. But here we are now with mobile about to be released within a couple months most likely, so I don't see why the same thing can't happen with group Ironman mode. The next thing I want to show you is a tweet from Kaimo. He's in the clan chat / Discord, and he comments on every video too. Hello, by the way, Kaimo. And he tweeted Mod Ash asking if and when group Ironman mode can be expected. And what Ash replied to that was that we know people would like it, but cannot reasonably expect the engine to do what we need for it while they're working on mobile. Now pay attention to that last part, while they're working on mobile. He didn't say that it's not possible, and the way he makes it sound is that it might be possible to at least entertain the idea, but they currently have so many of their resources, meaning developers, focused on working to perfect and get mobile released as soon as possible. This also doesn't necessarily mean that it is possible or something that they have planned to do, but it does make it sound like that it might be possible. So to answer the question on whether or not it's possible is maybe, because it doesn't seem like it's impossible, but there's also no confirmation that it would be possible. I'm sorry it's not a direct answer, but this is all the info I can come up with, and I can't really blame Jagex for being vague about it because I'd rather have that than have false promises. So now let's discuss the pros and cons of group Ironman mode being in the game, and I'm going to start with the pros of it first. How would group Ironman mode be beneficial? The first pro to this, like with any new Ironman mode, is it's going to be a brand new, fresh high scores table. People who weren't playing, say, a year ago when hardcore Ironman mode came out will now stand a chance to compete for the top pages of the group Ironman high scores. And a lot of people live for the high scores, so this would be a very attractive reason that would draw more players to try it. Another beneficial aspect, which I think is huge, is that it promotes a sense of community within the game. And since the rise of Discord, I feel that talking and playing together with other players has been much more commonplace. And I know Skype and TeamSpeak have been around forever, but I feel like Discord is just so much more user-friendly and more appealing to the average player. Group Ironman mode, I think, would only promote that sense of community and working together more, which I believe would be a great way to extend the longevity of old school RuneScape as a game in general. I also think it'd be a great idea because you could see so many different styles of gameplay between the different teams. Like as a very basic example, say there's a duo, they could have one person solely focus on skilling while the other person focuses on combat. They'll be gaining levels so much faster than being focused on the more general or main account build, but at the same time, for example, the combat player won't have anyone to duo bosses with, and that might make it much more inefficient depending on what is being done. But I think it would be really cool to see how each group creates their build, whether they have combinations of skillers and fighters, or just a bunch of mains, or even some unique things as well. A very specific example, which I just thought of right now, is maybe you could have like the other accounts run Essence to a runecrafting peer who's rushing to get 91 runecrafting, and that way they could provide double nature runes for the team. But I mean, it's just little things like that it would be really cool to see what people come up with. Like I said at the start of this video, I am biased towards adding this game mode, and the reason why I want it is to create content, of course. I really hope this doesn't come off as selfish because that's not the only reason why I want group Ironman mode, and I truly do believe that adding this mode would be good for the game. But I've had multiple discussions about group Ironman mode with a friend of mine named EVscape, who also happens to make videos, and boy, if this game mode gets released, I'm telling you, we would be a much better duo than Soup and Alkin could ever be. I'm not trying to start heat though, I'm just saying. Alright, but now I want to go over the cons or potential issues with group Ironman mode, and what I think could be done to solve those potential issues. The biggest thing that I think people are worried about is it'll be dead content in a few months, because I think that if one player in your group quits, then that could mean that it's pretty much over for everyone. However, besides just the basic restrictions of different Ironman modes, I believe that there's actually hidden restrictions as well that aren't necessarily set in stone, but are more like behind the scenes kind of stuff. So with hardcore Ironman, I mean, it's possible to get all the Wilderness Diaries done and get all the God Wars dungeon armors and get every drop from Corp, but 99% of players will never get all that done as a hardcore because it's not really realistic. For example, on my hardcore, I've come to terms with the fact that I'll never get a Dragon Axe or a Dragon Pickaxe because I'm just not willing to risk my status at DKs or Wilderness bosses, and I'll also probably never get a Dragon Axe from Wintertoad either because it's so rare. So a hidden restriction on my hardcore Ironman would be I'd have to get 99 woodcutting with a rune axe and 99 mining with a rune pick, and it's a restriction that I've come to accept as part of the game mode. So getting back to group Ironman mode now, a hidden restriction of that would be that you are relying on your partner to keep playing. And similar to hardcore, when you die, that's when the game mode ends for you. But in the case of group Ironman, if your partner or group members stop playing, then that would be essentially the end of the game for you. So yes, it would suck, and it seems like just that fact alone would make it dead content, but I believe that's actually a very necessary part of the game mode, which leads me to the next con, which is that the game mode is too easy as a group. Which, as I just said, even though it would be easy from the start, as time goes on, people don't play RuneScape forever, so you would see less and less players in the endgame stages of group Ironman mode simply for that reason. I'm not exactly sure how the high scores would work, but I would assume that if someone stops playing, then that would put your team at a huge disadvantage towards competing in the high scores. Speaking of high scores, that would be another potential issue. So like, would you take the average stats of the players, or would you add them all up? Or would there be like a separate high scores for each number of players? So like a high scores for duos, a high scores for groups of 3, and so on. Although that definitely wouldn't be a detrimental issue to the game mode, and something like that would be relatively simple for Jagex to work out whether they decide by themselves or pulled it. Another very interesting issue is if one player bots or gets caught cheating, and the only fair thing I can think of would be to give each account the same punishment. I mean, I think it should be different if someone gets muted, then it would just be based on that player. But if someone gets like a 2-day ban for macroing, then I can't see any other fair way than giving everyone the same, because you don't know what was traded over. When you start a group with another person, you're essentially giving them your complete trust and becoming blood brothers with them, which isn't something to take lightly at all in a game mode like this. But those are the main potential issues that I could think of about this game mode, and I'm sure that there's many others that I just couldn't think of, because like I said earlier, it is hard to think of the other perspective when you're so focused on a single particular idea. So please let me know other potential issues that could come with this game mode in the comments. And just a couple more quick little things I want to talk about. One thing is that I watched the Kemp Q video a while back, and he brought up a really interesting concept, which was that it would be much easier to create certain pking builds this way as a group Ironman. Because remember, Ironmen don't gain XP in PvP, so you can make a 10 HP PKer very easily by just using the high level accounts to supply the PK account build with Granite Mauls, Dark Bows, Claws, etc. Which would be pretty OP because I'm not sure how possible it is to do that with the current Ironman restrictions. Something else that I'm curious about is would the group Ironmen be able to PK each other and pick up each other's loot? And also, would they get XP for any damage that they did to each other in PvP? If they do get XP, then it could be a relatively easy method to gain really fast XP by bringing the group to clan wars and have them constantly running back in while you're barraging them or using chins, which Sir Pugger did in one of his videos. And if they can gain XP from PvP against each other, then another thing that you could do, which is like more endgame, is that you could get the group in someone's house with a pool and a combat ring, and have one person constantly declaw specking 2 of the others, while the other 2 run back and forth to the pool to give the guy their special attacks with energy transfer, which is already insane enough XP for a regular account, but that could be an extremely fast way to get XP for an Ironman. I just wanted to throw that out there because it was on my mind. But that is going to wrap up the video, and like I've mentioned, please leave your thoughts and opinions on group Ironman mode in the comments, because I like seeing every perspective, and I do hope that we can have civil debates in the comments and not let them get out of hand. But seriously, I want to hear any thoughts you have at all. Like, should it be added? What kind of short or long-term effects could it have? What other potential issues could come up? I mean, those are just examples, but honestly, any thoughts you have at all, please leave a comment about it. And I'll also make a straw poll as well to put in the description, because I know a lot of people don't like to comment or don't have YouTube accounts, but straw polls are anonymous and you don't have to sign up or download anything to vote in them. But I do hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that this was able to shine some kind of light on the subject of group Ironman mode. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.